would it be to California family law attorneys not talking about the craziness that happens in Southern California? So I think probably the most high profile or the headline grabbing divorce proceeding over the last several years, really probably around the world, has been Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, which recently has had some interesting turns in it, to say the least. David, do you want to kind of give a little bit of background about what has happened and really what Brad Pitt's gone through?
Sure. Brad and Angelina, they adopted a bunch of kids. And then when their marriage kind of fell apart, she decided that she was going to kind of paint him as this alcoholic, abusive father. Sound familiar? Kind of a standard playbook, right? And really, I think what this was aside from like any psychological issues, which I can't opine on, her behavior is indicative of somebody that was trying to get sole legal and sole physical custody that she was asking for, mostly so she could move. Like, she was trying to get him out of the kids' lives so that she could move to, I believe it was London. And this is sort of your stereotypical narcissistic parental alienation type stuff is what we were seeing going on there. And for these two people that have tremendous resources, I mean, just think about Clash of Titans. Like, that's what this case was. They both hired like the most high profile lawyers that you could find in town and threw vast amounts of money at each other. And there were supervised visitation monitors for Brad. And there were, I'm sure, child custody evaluations and lawyers battling over everything and her running into court for ex partes. And the reality is that the court, after all of this, at one point I was asked my opinion on how much they spent, and I said they probably each spent about $10 million apiece, if not more. The court came back and said basically he's a good dad, let him have custody, and that's basically what they ended up with. And it's, from my perspective, I'm looking at this and going, here's something that I really hope makes the judges start paying attention to. How much they need to take control and stop the fighting. They need to be able to put some measures in place to stop these lawyers that are just generating bills and bogus fighting. Because I see that all the time. I'm sure you do too, where it's like we're going into court and the allegations are just laughable. And they were the same thing with Brad. I mean, one of the big allegations on why he was abusive was they were on one of their private jets and he had a beer or two and had a teenage son who got a little mouthy. And so he did what most fathers do and got a little bit bigger and yelled a little bit and maybe pushed him a bit. And that's considered like abuse in today's environment. From my perspective, I'm like, yeah, I would have been happy if that's all that would have happened to me. Like when I got mouthy, it's like bad things happen. So they were bootstrapping off of what was essentially a good father's parenting moment and turning that into abuse. And that was kind of like the start of this whole thing.
And I think that's a thing that happens in a lot of cases. And I would say the majority of my cases are in Riverside and San Bernardino. So I don't see as many trials. I think after a couple trips to court and the bills show up, just financially, I don't necessarily see the protracted litigation. But I think, like you said, the $10 million a piece, I've seen figures. I've seen in the media, $1 million each, $5 million each, $10 million each, like projecting $50 million total.
There's no way they spent only $1 million each.
Yeah,
there's no way.
But I think it illuminates a major issue, probably one of the bigger beefs I have with the way California family courts operate, and that is it's a pay-to-play operation. And I'm not talking about having an attorney. I'm talking about if you make the littlest allegation, some judges will just immediately go to professional supervised visits. Right. And it's like you've made a hearsay allegation of someone who's raised a kid for 3, 5, 7, 10 years. And now you're going to make them pay $300 a week or $500 a week to have some time with their kid with someone who did 24-hour class. I think it's 24 hours worth of class, and you can be a visitation supervisor in the state of California.
Yeah, it's laughable.
so there's no qualifications. Yeah, some of them are retired law enforcement, some of them are social workers, but the vast majority of them, it's just a way to make a buck. They really aren't going to do anything, and they really serve no purpose, and they aren't necessary. But the dad has to foot that bill a lot of times.
Right. Because that's a way in which mom is exerting, and here's that phrase, coercive control. Because if he can't afford to see the kids, well, then he can't see the kids, which gives her more time with the kids, which means his child support goes up. So he's got less money to now pay for the supervised monitor.
Yeah, no, that's
all a giant scam. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, it's like, this is a scam. It's a giant scam. It's very rare that I have somebody that really, truly has enough anger issues or is so lacking in self-control that they really do need a supervised visitation monitor.
Agreed, 100%. I think it's a way of just like granting the TRO for something that is completely laughable that it could even occur or very questionable. Right. A judge can order, hey, well, until we get to the bottom of this, we're going to do professionally supervised visitation. Or they give the mom the power, like, oh, you got to find someone who mom agrees to do it, or you got to pay a professional. And so what's mom going to do? There's almost no way if judges throw something vague out there that mom's going to agree to such an arrangement.
Guaranteed. You know, and the other thing that I see a lot of judges and moms do is they empower the child to such a degree that it just seems absurd to me. I've got a case right now where dad is a very successful businessman. Dad is not an alcoholic, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, has made many millions of dollars, super rich guy. Literally is not allowed to reprimand his child because anytime that he says anything to his kid, puts any boundary, any limit on him, kid runs right to mom, dad's being mean to me. Oh, you can't see him anymore, you're being mean to the kid. And the supervised monitor and or the parenting coordinator, depending on which one it is that day, because we've got both, is like, Dad, you can't do that to John. Johnny does not need you being mean and abusive to him. Like literally setting actual parenting boundaries and limits is considered abusive if you're a man.
Yeah. 100%. And then the other thing you always have to tell guys is like, hey, you guys, like, hey, she may have used the spatula or a sandal or a shoe and you used your belt during the marriage. That has to stop right now because you will get the kids taken away. All they have to do is run to the court, file for a domestic violence restraining order. You'll get the kids taken away for 3 weeks. And 21 days from now, we're going to be fighting for you having any parental rights at all, essentially.
Exactly. And which is stupid and absurd, and most guys can't afford it. I mean, you know, we talk about Brad and Angelina, and their lawyers were, $1,000, $1,500 an hour, and associates at $750 an hour, and paralegals at $400 an hour. Like that's Clash of the Titans, just sucking giant sums of money out of rich people.
Yeah,
which is not the vast bulk of lawyers, thankfully. But the reality is that, like, you and I, it's like we're still several $100s an hour. Like, no matter what, it's like we are expensive. Like, it's just the way life is. And so you've got a lot of guys who are cut off at the knees financially. They've been kicked out of their apartment. They don't have a place to live. Sometimes the tools are kept from them. And they're struggling to, like, get back on their feet, and they need help. And that's, one of the things that I try and do with my podcast, and you're doing with this podcast, and I've got my online course and I've got my videos on YouTube that are all designed to like help guys get into court with something if they can't afford a lawyer, because most of them can't.
Yeah, that's and it goes back to the pay to play. Every single thing, in my opinion, a lot of the third parties that get involved in courts are decisions that the judge could and should make. Yeah. That's what they're there to do. I understand there are issues when there needs to be a professional evaluation done. There needs to be someone brought in because there's actual mental health concerns. But the number of times that out here it's 3111 or 730 evaluation gets ordered on a case that just is high conflict, is amazing. And you look at it and it's like, okay, yeah, both parents, you've got lawyers' bills to pay. You're trying to survive child support, all this stuff. Hey, you're going to need to go each pay $4,000. Or some judges, if the dad's the non-custodial parent, will say, hey, you're the one that needs to get this done. You're going to need to go foot the bill for $8,000 up front to get this evaluation started.
Yeah, I love the phrase subject to reallocation later, meaning maybe we'll make mom contribute later. Like that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's like it's not feasible. And what's the judge doing there? What's the system designed to do? If you show up for help, I mean, it's a public service, and then they refer you to a private business and say you have to pay thousands of dollars for us to make a decision. It doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean, the whole system is completely screwy.